Behavioral interview questions are some of the more challenging questions you'll get asked in any interview process. And in ExxonMobil, it's no different. They're absolutely going to ask you some behavioral interview questions. In today's video, I'm going to tell you exactly what those are, how to answer them, and I'm going to give you actual behavioral interview questions that ExxonMobil asked in their interview process and teach you how to answer them from a recruiter's perspective. Now, this is video 2 in a 5-video series, so make sure you watch to the very end, and then at the end of the video, I'll direct you to the 3rd video and cover what that one's going to be about. All right, let's get into it. Now, the first thing I want to cover is what is a behavioral interview question. A behavioral interview question is basically a question in which they're asking you to recall a previous situation, walk them through how you handled it, so that they can understand how you deal with very specific situations. The best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. So they're asking you, what happened and how did you deal with it, so they can get an idea of how you might deal with situations at ExxonMobil. So these questions start usually with something like, can you give me an example of, or can you tell me about a time when? Anything that basically asks you to recall a previous situation. Now, the best way to answer these is using the STAR method. The STAR method is a framework for answering behavioral interview questions, and it's situation, task, action, result. It's an acronym, and it basically allows you to build a framework to walk them through exactly what happened in a way that's going to allow you to include all the necessary details. So as we go through these questions, we'll bring that up a few more times. We'll talk about how to use the STAR method and what you need to specifically include in your answers. Now, the first interview question that we're going to cover, this is one that ExxonMobil asked in their interview process, is tell me about a time that you had a conflict at work. What was a conflict and what was the outcome? Basically, they're asking you, okay, tell us about a time where there was a situation where there was conflict at work, and what did you do? How did you handle it? Now, at the very start here, I'm going to pop this on screen. Exxon, instead of values, has what they call guiding principles. And those guiding principles are how they operate on a day-to-day basis. It's basically their culture, their values. So their guiding principles, one here, you could see, this is how they deal with employees, but in this, it's open communication. So as you answer this question, it's really important to have open communication as one of the tenets of how you deal with conflict. So keep that in mind. Now, as you're answering this question, you want to make sure you accomplish a few things, right? You want the conflict not to be super contentious, right? So maybe it could be a differing of opinion, not you got into a fist fight at work. A fist fight at work is different than a disagreement. One of these reflects much more better on you as a candidate. So talk about the disagreement. So situation, okay, where were you working? What were you doing? What was the task? The task was maybe the thing you were doing, and the disagreement you have, what was the action? So the action here needs to be talking to the person, communicating, listening to their perspective, and then perhaps, explaining to them your perspective on it and convincing them why your approach is a better course of action, and the result. What was the outcome? How did you resolve it? They're specifically asking for that in the question, what was the outcome? So you need to make sure that you include that. Now, this next question is, tell me about a time you were able to lead by example. Now, it is really easy to answer this question and just talk about something where, I led here and this was, it was a positive outcome. But you're missing the boat if you do that. One of the things you want to do whenever you get a question like this that is so open-ended, and it's what I would call an opportunity question, is you want to use it as an opportunity to demonstrate a great achievement or a result that you had. So the way you should look at this is look at what you would consider to be your 2 or 3 most significant achievements in your career. And if one of them has a situation in which you did lead, that's a type of example you want to use, right? So you want to talk about a time in your career in which you led by example and the outcome was significant. It made a significant impact to the organization. You still want to use the STAR method, situation, task, action, result, but it's really important to highlight an achievement and also quantify the impact. So what that means is if you can talk about something you did and what the financial impact was over a specific period of time and how it impacted your organization, that's really what you want to be doing here. Remember, situation, what was the situation you were in? What was the task that you did that you were leading by example? What were the specific actions that you took that made it so people wanted to follow you and follow your lead? And result, what was the outcome? And remember, if you can quantify that, it makes it a better example. The next question is, can you tell me about a time where you had to meet a strict deadline? A few things are important here. You want to follow the STAR method: situation, task, action, result, right? So you want to give them a good, thorough answer. But it's really important here to, when you're highlighting what you need to do and what the deadline was, strategically, you want to let them know that you understand the bigger picture, right? You're someone who understands how what you're doing impacts the success or failure of a team or the organization. So as you're going through, make sure you're telling them, okay, so I had a deadline I had to meet, and my boss let me know that it needed to be done during this period of time. That was a pretty tight deadline, but I also understood the importance of it because me succeeding in this also meant that my company was able to ABC. So I put together a plan, I assembled my team, I gave my boss updates along the way to let my boss know that we were going to meet that deadline, and worked hard to complete it by said date, right? That's essentially what you want to be doing. Make sure you use the framework. What was the situation I was in? What was the task that I had to do in the deadline? What were the specific actions I took to meet that deadline? And include communicating to your boss frequently so they understood where you're at in the process, and then what was the outcome? The outcome should be meeting that deadline. And if you can do that, you're going to answer this question great. So the next question is really interesting. And it's, we're looking for someone who can make decisions under pressure. Give me an example of a time where you had to make a decision under pressure quickly and efficiently. So there's a few tells in that question in terms of how they're hoping you answer it, right? The first one is they're telling you pressure, right? You're going to be under pressure in this role, so they want someone who's comfortable with that. So in answering this question, you have to demonstrate a level of comfortability with pressure. 2, quickly, right? And efficiently. 3, so they're looking for someone who can make decisions under pressure quickly and efficiently, right? So that needs to come through in your answer. You still want to use the STAR method, but it's really important here to actually give them a situation where it was pressure, right? If you give them an example in which you answer a question, but they don't recognize pressure occurring, they're like, well, where was the pressure there? How was that stressful? You're not achieving the desired outcome. You have to let them know, okay, here's why there was pressure to this. And then you need to walk them through your process for making a decision. And that process needs to be both quick and efficient, right? But it also needs to show that you have a strategic grasp on the situation you're in, and you understand the potential repercussions of the decision you're making. So as you're walking them through, you want to say, well, I was working in a previous job and I had to make a decision, and it was really important because it would impact the members of my team in a significant way. So what I did was, I listed all the pros and the cons. I understood that I needed to make this quick because the deadline was fast approaching. I quickly identified that one solution was far superior than the other, and I think the long-term impact would be far more positive. So I did this. I worked on a communication plan and a rollout, communicated with my leader, and let them know this was a decision, and ended up being a great decision because of A, B, and C, right? So what you did there was you let them know, here's the situation. It was stressful because of the impact. I had a process for making the decision. I made it, communicated it, and it was a positive decision. These are basically the things. Now, it's hard to give specific examples that are relevant to you because your career is your own, but find something that makes sense. Don't make up an example because they might ask secondary and third questions in which you'd have to answer. It's going to be hard to do that if you make up an example, but make sure you follow the framework. Make sure you follow the different guidelines, and you should do great. Now, another big question they're going to ask you is, why do you want to work at ExxonMobil? And it's probably the most important question you're going to be asked. So I made an entire video on it. That video is right here. These questions are really important, behavioral interview questions. But if you mess up, why do you want to work here? You're going to miss out on the job to somebody else who does a better job answering it, because it is absolutely critical. So I am done here, but I will see you over there.